From the Performance Racing Network at Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Trouble, we got a car in the wall. 4, 5, 6 cars pile in. Jimmy Johnson now pulls to the bumper. He's going to try to make a move on through it.
It's Racers Odds. Now, here are your hosts, John Roberts, Jeff Hammond, and Jeff Culiandro.
And welcome once again, everybody, to yet another edition of Racers Odds here on PRN VEASAN. Want to welcome our viewers and listeners on SiriusXM, NASCAR.com, and several other YouTube channels. You can find us all over the place. It's basically what we're trying to say. We're easy to find, Jeff.
We're easy to find, and hopefully we're easy to listen to, folks, because, again, we're having a lot of fun bringing you the information about the race and about how possibly to put, as John liked to say, your smart money to work for you until you can come out on top.
Yeah, so we are headed this week to the 3-turn triangle at Pocono. All 3 turns are different, and also Pocono features the longest front straightaway in all of racing. So when it comes to wagering on Pocono, there are many factors to take into consideration. So for a little update on that, and also a little update on wagering news around the country, let's go to Jeff Culiandro. And Jeff, when you look at it, how this thing is picking up steam across the country, we now have yet another state that has legalized sports wagering.
Yeah, we sure do, John. It's a time of rapid change in the sports betting landscape. As you mentioned, this week now Indiana has approved a sports betting bill that will essentially legalize sports betting from, they hope, September 1st going onward. And of course, NASCAR is one of the sports that's listed as a viable sport to bet on.
So, Jeff, when you look at the 3 turns and some of the surprise winners we've had over the past few races at Pocono, and the fact that we just raced there 6 weeks ago, what do the odds makers look at? What do the handicappers look at this race in particular?
John, this is one of those tracks where really, like many tracks, track position means so much, but starting position is often how these odds are sort of shaped, especially after qualifying and after practice. So we see big numbers, especially when it comes to head-to-heads, if there's a wide variance in starting position between 2 drivers.
So here's the thing about today, Hammond, that we have now had 9 cars go to the back of the pack simply after pre-race inspection, and also a couple of engine changes and damage to cars along the way. So we have a lot of shuffling going on in what has been a tech inspection nightmare for some of these teams.
Yeah, it has definitely been a rough start for a lot of these teams, and you pointed it out, and that's the fact that NASCAR, this was an impound race, so the cars were put back through inspection early this morning, and they were found to be, out of tolerance. And for that reason, their times were disallowed. And 9 of them have been put back to the back of the field for that reason, including Ryan Blaney, Jimmy Johnson, Chase Elliott. A few guys are there just to mention those. I said Chase Elliott, excuse me about that. Chase crashed his car. He's going to a backup. So he still had his starting position, but he will also go to the back of the field along with Kyle Larson. And let's see, I think it was the 43 car had an engine change, so he's going to the back. So we got 12 cars going to the back, and the thing is right now, Jeff C., when this is happening, how is the betting world reacting to this? Because we got a couple drivers that were basically, in contention to, be like a Ryan Blaney, former winner here, and also now he's going to the back.
It's really interesting, Jeff. It's basically a race to your mobile app. Or your laptop. And a lot of these people, realize what happens, and the sports books are not always as fast to react as you would think they might be in many cases. So, even looking at it now, there have been wide variances. For example, Chase Elliott, he was a huge underdog, going into this race. But now that so many cars are going to line up behind him, his situation is not quite so bad. So there could be some value on some of these underdogs who are just starting deeper than their counterpart.
So here's something that may affect our betting lines today and our odds as we move closer and closer to race time. For the first time at a non-SMI track, officials have put down what is called track bite. PJ1, it's a sticky substance very similar to soda pop, to Coca-Cola. Yep. It's very similar to that in what they put down on the track. And Jeff, now that you're looking at a car going down that straightaway at a certain amount of speed. I mean, it's the longest straightaway in all of racing.
You can land a 737 on it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how big it is. So now, say Kyle Busch is driving down there. He knows he may have an extra lane of grip to go into. What do you think that's going to do to the racing action?
Well, you're not going to see it react real quick, because I think most of these drivers realize this stuff has got to be heated up, and when they drop the green flag, it's not going to be at its maximum. And the other thing is, the track folks, they did not deliberately, spray it from basically the bottom of the racetrack all the way to the top. They've got it in certain areas, and so the drivers are going to be kind of careful. It's more in the upper area of a third lane. Let's put it that way. And that has to be warmed up, just like a lot of times when people start trying to lay rubber into the track. You got to warm this PJ1 up a little bit. So that's going to be something that you'll have to kind of watch for. And besides that, I mean, I'm not up there right now to see what's going on, but I've been listening to a lot of what's being said about it. So let's listen to Kevin Harvick, our pole sitter, what he thinks about it.
I think it'll look different, and I think at some point you're going to have more options. It's just going to take enough people running up there to have it come in enough to to really benefit. And I think that the restarts will probably be where you see it the most beneficial. I still don't think the preferred line is going to be anywhere but the bottom of all three corners when you're running by yourself. But if you can get up the racetrack and only lose a tenth or two instead of 7 or 8 tenths trying to get around, a car that's off the pace or 3/4 of a second slower than you, and you can make it work, that's a game changer and a step in the right direction.
And also, it could have a great outcome effect on the outcome of today's race in terms of who's able to win this thing, Jeff, because whoever figures it out quickest is going to be the victor. But we have seen some guys as young drivers before figure out Pocono with or without track bite. Denny Hamlin, his rookie year, he swept. Carl Edwards came out of the gate and just felt Pocono. And, of course, Joey Logano had a very famous victory here as he bumped Mark Martin, his the guy who was maybe his biggest proponent of going into Cup racing. They bumped him out of the way. Chris Buescher and the rain delay. Boy, we've seen all kinds of different scenarios to win Pocono.
Well, right, Ryan Blaney was a little bit of a big surprise. But here's to your point right now, and if you're listening to what Kevin's saying, they're going to have to get up there, get it kind of warmed up, and get it, I guess you might say, working and activated to where they can get that kind of grip. But on these restarts, especially going off into turn one, if you're able to come in there on a little bit higher line and get a run off of turn one down the Long Pond straightaway, which is also a long straightaway here at this racetrack, it can be a big benefit. So it's going to change the dynamic of the race just from that aspect. Now, we've already seen some guys have some trouble. We talked about, Kyle Larson, for one, he likes running high, so this is one of the cars you may want to watch. It'll be coming from the back. Look for him to start hunting that high groove, and particularly on the start of this race. He may start trying to work it in early to try to gain some track position. You're going to hear a lot about track position today, too. Strategy and track position is going to be real important. We've already been at this racetrack, just like you pointed out, about 6 weeks ago. A lot of people got some good gut feeling and what they need to do to their cars to make them better. It should be a much more competitive race today.
There was a time in history where we almost lost Pocono. Doc and Rose Mattioli, two physicians from Philadelphia, built the track, but Hurricane Agnes came through in the 70s, and there was also a gasoline shortage in the 70s that made it very difficult to get to the racetrack. They wanted to shut the place down, but Bill France Jr. said, Bill France Sr. said, please do not do that. It will work out in the long run for you. And now we have second generations of that family running the racetrack. So let's get you there now for the latest from the garage. And Pat Patterson joins us now from the Big Triangle up in the Pocono Mountains. And Pat, really coming into this whole thing, the story was more about the traction on the track, but now it seems as if it has turned to inspection with so many cars failing and going to the back of the pack.
Yeah, Johnny, this is the second time we've come here this year. NASCAR is pretty stringent, I guess is the best way to put it, on exactly what goes on to the racetrack. And inspection has been a big hassle for a lot of teams today. So we got a lot of issues when it comes to how the lineup will actually start today. And we'll actually kind of have to wait and see how all that plays out. Earlier in the weekend, yesterday, we had a couple of cars hit the wall. Chase Elliott's car was badly damaged. So was Kyle Larson's car. They had to go to backup cars. So you can't really tell what's going to happen here today by the lineup and or the way they went through inspection.
Well, Pat, let's go back to the PJ1 debate, because everybody's really kind of anxious about what do we think we're going to see here today. It looked like it worked pretty decent in the truck race, but what do you think about the Cup cars?
Well, I kind of got to go off what Kevin Harvick said earlier when he won the pole for this one, Jeff, and that is that, he seems to think that at some point it will be a factor in the way some of the faster cars maybe have to get around some of the slower cars here today. But truthfully, most of the opinions have been that the PJ1 really hasn't been in the groove where they needed it to be. Harvick said the fast way around the racetrack is still going to be the bottom of the racetrack. So I don't know how much they're going to learn, they're going to learn a lot today about where to put this stuff next year, I think. I don't necessarily think it's going to be a big factor for the faster cars today, because I think they're going to be at the bottom of the racetrack in both turn 1, in the tunnel turn, and turn 3. And of course, we know there's no fourth turn.
Yeah, exactly. They just left that one out, I guess, along the way. Hey, but Pat, your trips through the garage area, who are some of the favorites? We know William Byron had the fastest 10-lap average, but when you look at qualifying and the starting lineup and everything, it seems like it's almost anybody's guess as to who the favorites are today.
Well, you can't overlook Kyle Busch. I mean, he goes for 3 in a row here, which I think Tim Richmond and Bobby Allison are the only 2 guys to get that done here at Pocono. So Kyle Busch will be tough today. There's no question. He could start, over here in Wilkes-Barre, and he'll still make a good attempt at winning here today. I think Harvick, they won last week, and I think they're out for blood. I mean, they're out to get some more wins. So I'm thinking Harvick will be tough today as well here. Matt DiBenedetto, I don't think he can win, but I think he's a guy that can run in the top 5. And as you can hear, the PA system certainly can work here.
All right,
working right now, as a matter of fact. All the fans are behind me and here on the racetrack, walking up and down the pit road. There's a lot of stuff going on here. The driver's meet's just happened. So we could have to do here.
Pat Patterson, thank you very much. We certainly appreciate the insight, and stay cool up there today and enjoy the race.
Johnny, wasn't too sure what you said, but I will leave you with this. The weather's perfect. Got a great field of cars. We got a lot of unknowns today and a lot of desperate drivers that their season could end points-wise if they don't get something done today. And one of them's a 7-time champion. We'll be watching all the action from right here at the Tricky Triangle all afternoon.
Yeah, and Pat brings up a very good point there, Hammond, that Jimmy Johnson is currently 17 points out of playoff contention in the 17th spot. Clint Boyer is the last driver in, 17 up on Jimmy. That could change in a hurry, but if you look up and down the odds to win, Jimmy Johnson's going off at 30-1, Kyle Busch at plus 225, and that should not surprise you whatsoever because Kyle Busch raced here 25 times before and really didn't have a lot of luck, Jeff. In fact, had some trouble along the way. Now he seems to have grasped this track like nobody else's business. As Pat mentioned, he's going for 3 in a row, but he's won 3 of the last 4.
No, that's exactly right. He's definitely figured it out. And you bring up a very valid point when you talk about Jimmy Johnson. His problem began whenever he was basically disqualified, his qualifying time, that is, when he qualified 6th, which is a great starting position for the 48 team. And now he finds himself back in 32nd position. So they've got to start scrambling. If they were trying to make stage points, it's going to be very difficult to do that in the first stage. So a lot of things could happen at the drop of the flag here today, and it could affect the outcome of some of these drivers and teams trying to make the playoffs. This could wind up being, I hate to use this term, but it could wind up being their Waterloo.
Yep, exactly. So coming back here in just a moment on Racers Odds, we check in with Steve McKinnon from Vegas for the latest out there. Also back to Jeff Coyandro as we take a look at head-to-head matchups, groups, and also odds as who is the favorite to win this race and where some of the sharp money may be on some of these value bets along the way. Stay with us, everybody. Racers Odds. We'll be right back.
A numbers game with Gil Alexander.
Ladies and gentlemen, our pleasure to have Jeremy Piven in studio.
I'm really good friends with Julian Edelman. He and I are very similar size and almost identical, except he's an elite athlete. I'm not. Other than that, everything lines up.
Same person.
Yeah, same. I run the same routes.
Every time we see Julian Edelman on Sunday, we'll be thinking of you.
There you go.
A numbers game with Gil Alexander. Weekdays from 10 a.m. to noon Eastern. VSiN.com and Sirius XM 204. VSiN, the news you need to win.
Do you have an idea for an invention or new product? Do you think companies would be interested in your idea? Do you want to try to get a patent? Then call InventHelp now. InventHelp keeps your idea confidential and explains every step of the invention process. We create professional materials representing your idea and submit it to companies who are looking for new ideas. We have more than 9,000 companies who have agreed to review ideas in confidence. If a company shows interest in manufacturing your invention, we can negotiate on your behalf. We have helped over 10,000 clients receive patents. We also offer services including 3D modeling and animation demonstrating your idea, prototyping services, and we use state-of-the-art technology to show InventHelp client ideas to additional companies. Join the thousands of people just like you who chose InventHelp to pursue their idea. We are experienced. We are working for you. We are InventHelp.
Call us for free information at 1-800-542-6751. 1-800-542-6751. 1-800-542-6751.
Are you ready to celebrate the thrill of victory and cash a ticket even on defeats? Make Point Spread Weekly a part of your prep for all the games. Baseball, football, golf, NASCAR. Point Spread Weekly. Sharpen your edge now with the help of Matt Humans, Dave Tooley, and the rest of my guys in the desert. Point Spread Weekly gets you ready with exclusive handicapping stories backed by proprietary data you won't find anywhere else. Go to vsin.com/subscribe. That's vsin.com/subscribe for Point Spread Weekly.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
Get ready for every NASCAR weekend with VSIN's Point Spread Weekly. Editor Steve Makinen runs a simulation prior to every NASCAR Monster Energy race. He takes into account driver, team, track type, speed at practice, and more. The simulator is run 1,000 times and results are in Point Spread Weekly. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Enjoy NASCAR more. Point Spread Weekly. Subscribe now. Log on to vsin.com/subscribe. VSIN, changing the way you watch sports.
We're back with more Racers Odds.
And welcome back, everybody, to Racers Odds, especially our listeners and viewers who are with us on NASCAR.com and SiriusXM Radio. We appreciate you coming along for the ride. Now, let's get to the experts like we always try to do here. Steve Makinen is the editor of Point Spread Weekly on the VSiN Network and a veteran odds maker. Steve, when you look at this racetrack and what it's done in years past, how do your simulation models come out this time around?
Hey, guys. How are you? By the way?
Excellent.
Thanks for having me on. Happy race day to you.
Thanks.
Last week, we talked about my handicap ability grades. I mentioned New Hampshire was a track that you'd like to use statistics, past results in your handicapping for the upcoming race. Pocono, not so much. I give the grade a C- at this track, meaning there's only 3 or 4 other tracks on the circuit where it's, I guess, more random, the results. And I think what happens, the reason because of that is this has turned into more of a fuel mileage decision type of race at the end. There's a lot more pit strategy that determines the outcome of here. And that's hard to predict. I mean, if someone give me a simulation on how to predict those types of odds, I'd love to see it. But, yeah, Pocono is a little difficult compared to other tracks.
Okay, Steve, you talk about the difficulties of handicapping something that really fuel mileage plays into. When you see an introduction of a foreign object, I'm talking about the traction control, the grip stuff they're putting down, PJ1, and you hear drivers make comments like Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch. How much does that affect you, or can you factor anything into your simulations with this kind of introduction of stuff?
Very hard to quantify for an odds maker. Now, in that sense, the bettor might have a better shot at interpreting that if they're watching the interviews, they're reading the news about these things. Those are types of situations where bettors can get an advantage over the odds maker.
So, Steve, every weekend we get a chance to visit with Jeff Cuyandro on these very subjects, and one of the things that he tells us, because of when you go into a track that is this unpredictable, where there's a lot of variance in the winners, that maybe your sharp money is not necessarily on odds to win, but where you really find the place where you can gain value is in some of the head-to-head matchups, because that doesn't really have all that much to do with who actually wins the race, but you may have a little bit more control and a little bit more value on that bet.
I absolutely agree with him there. Unfortunately, and nowadays, depending on the book that you're using or where you're going to place your wagers, there's not as many head-to-head wagers as I've seen in the past in recent years. I'd like to see where you can get a lineup of at least maybe the top 25 guys, be able to pick and choose who you want to go against. And I think as NASCAR evolves more in the betting arena, I think you're going to be able to see things like that. So looking forward to that type of thing building with NASCAR.
Hi, Steve. This is Jeff Cuyandro. You talk about Pocono grading out as a C- in terms of handicapping ability. How does that alter your approach? I would imagine a track like Daytona and Talladega also get poor grades. How do you then approach wagering on a race when you just can't predict what's going to happen?
Well, I'm sure you do this, Jeff. I think you're looking for live underdogs. I mean, this is a great opportunity to maybe get somebody who's not running up front every week. Maybe a guy like a William Byron today, showing some great speed. I think he's about a 16-1 or something from what I've seen. Guys like that who've shown speed this week, if things work out for him, he doesn't encounter trouble. They make the right decisions on pit road. You can really score with underdogs on races like this.
Yeah, without question. Last week you mentioned sort of what I call a value tax, which is attached to some of the big name drivers like Kyle Busch. And that essentially means that you're paying a premium on these drivers because the sports book can always expect a certain amount of action on them. In your opinion, are there any drivers who the sports books haven't quite caught up with yet and do provide value on a week-to-week basis?
Well, I think you're going to be paying more for the Bushes, Harvick, Truex. One of the guys I don't think seems to get the respect he probably should at some weeks, especially even this week. A guy like Joey Logano, he can, in my opinion, he can win at any track, any week. In fact, my simulator has him picked second for today, and I saw 11-1 on him earlier this morning. So he's a top level driver in my opinion, and I don't think he's treated the same as a Kyle Busch or a Kevin Harvick or a Truex on a week to week basis.
So, Steve, with the news out of Indiana this week about them jumping on the bandwagon here, that just adds yet another state that is legalizing sports wagering across the board. What do you see the future there? How many more states are going to see the value in this and sort of just jump on the bandwagon, for lack of a better term?
In 5 years, I would hope all 50. It makes no sense to have 30. It might as well. Everyone should be doing this. Once I think states see the revenue opportunities they're losing out on, the type of, I think people have too much of a fear of the wagering aspect of things. But on sports like this, I think it's a fantastic opportunity. It adds to the experience at a track, and I think the states that are passing it by are missing a huge opportunity.
I'm going to stay on the same line of questioning with you. You mentioned a moment ago about being able to pick your own matchups as far as your head-to-heads are concerned. And, there's other, type of prop bets that can come out of all this. When do you expect that some of these sports books are going to loosen things up to make some of this happen? Because in talking to the fans that are already using, our services and working and, placing bets, they're wanting more. So when can we maybe expect the industry to kind of like get behind this and make these states or wherever and whoever's making these decisions to occur?
Well, I'd like to actually sit down with some of the people myself. I got planning on doing that in the coming months here. But haven't gotten down and talked to the guys with Easton quite a bit lately. So I think there's a good shot at this coming faster because this is really just statistical analysis and making sure you have some stability in how these numbers are being set. Because, I mean, if you are able to do that, I mean, there's no reason a book wouldn't want to offer any number of wagers to bettors. So when I first started doing this in the odds-making field, they had one of my favorite bets that I was ever able to produce numbers for was just over-under positions on drivers. You could go in and say, even a Darrell Wallace, let's say, his over-under be position 23. You could bet him over or under that number, and I think that would be a fantastic option you could offer for all 40 drivers in a race. Or even if you just wanted to limit it to the top 25, I think that would be fantastic.
Steve Makinen, thank you so much for your time and your great insight. We really appreciate you joining us, man. Keep up the good work and hope to talk to you soon.
I appreciate it, guys. Enjoy the race today.
Thank you, sir. And it should be a very enjoyable race today because, like Steve said, he pointed out, as we have talked about, not only in 10-lap average, but this is a racetrack, Hammond, where you can get an upset. We've seen it before, but someone the likes of William Byron at like a 16-1, and also, Brad Keselowski at a 14-1. That's a little surprising. But what about Eric Almirola at 30-1? You look at their averages and how they went in practice. It seemed to be pretty sharp bets.
Well, I mean, I think there's more of a long shot out there if you take a look at what Kyle Larson is sitting at. And if people say, well, he crashed his good car, well, I don't think they got a bad car in the Ganassi Racing. So he had problems last race, had to go to the back because his time was disallowed, but yet he fought his way back to the front, scored some stage points in the second stage, and led some of the race, about 30-some laps. So he likes this racetrack. It's not been kind to him yet. But you're talking about 40-1 odds. I mean, there's a guy, if you want to put this a little bit of a, hope and a prayer on, it could wind up getting you some good return.
And just for an example, when we talk about drivers being able to pass right now, if you look at Denny Hamlin and what happened last week, if you had money on Denny Hamlin, you might have said, oh, no, he's going to the back of the pack. Well, he was able to fight his way up to the second position and certainly score a lot of points there. And really, if he had a little bit more time, he probably could have gone on and won that race.
If he had another corner, we could run into Kevin Harvick.
One more corner, and then Kevin Harvick joined the ranks of the winners this season. We've had 4 new winners in the last 4 races, 8 different winners in the last 8 races, and certainly it could happen again. Now, throughout the show, you're going to see the clock up in the corner. That is the countdown clock to the actual green flag at Pocono today, which is shortly after 3 p.m. when we get down to business there. And we got 400 miles in front of us at Pocono, which should provide a lot of entertainment. So stick with us here, everybody. At the top of the hour, we'll recap what we're talking about here today on Racers Odds, and also check back in with our experts.
VSiN is the Vegas Stats and Information Network. VSiN is analysis that's always on the money.
The total on this game, 8 flat.
VSiN is the home of legendary broadcaster Brent Musburger.
I do want to talk about the next big thing in Las Vegas.
VSiN is your all-access pass behind the counter of a Las Vegas sportsbook.
Trends don't pay the rent. They're looking at the number.
VSiN, what are the odds? Find out on Sirius XM Channel 204.
Do you use the expensive blue or yellow pills to charge your sex life? Are you thinking about it? What if we could promise you the same results for less than $3 a pill? If you're paying $20 a pill for the other pills, you're getting taken to the cleaners. Call On Call Pharmacy right now and save as much as $700. 800-884-7919. On Call Pharmacy delivers the exact same results for less than $3. You'll save more than $16 a pill for the same results. And right now, radio callers will get 44 blue or yellow pills for $120 with free discreet shipping. You can save more than $700 off pharmacy prices. Call On Call Pharmacy now and take advantage of this special offer. 800-884-7919. Charge your sex life now and save a ton of money. Call now and get your 44 pills and save over $700 and qualify for free shipping. Stop overpaying and call right now. 800-884-7919. 800-884-7919. 800-884-7919.
Get ready for every NASCAR weekend with VSiN's Point Spread Weekly. Editor Steve Makinen runs a simulation prior to every NASCAR Monster Energy race. He takes into account driver, team, track type, speed at practice, and more. The simulator is run 1,000 times and results are in Point Spread Weekly. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Enjoy NASCAR more. Point Spread Weekly. Subscribe now. Log on to vsin.com/subscribe. VSIN, changing the way you watch sports.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
Are you ready to celebrate the thrill of victory and cash a ticket even on defeats? Make Point Spread Weekly a part of your prep for all the games. Baseball, football, golf, NASCAR. Point Spread Weekly. Sharpen your edge now with the help of Matt Humans, Dave Tooley, and the rest of my guys in the desert. Point Spread Weekly gets you ready with exclusive handicapping stories backed by proprietary data you won't find anywhere else. Go to vsin.com/subscribe. That's vsin.com/subscribe for Point Spread Weekly.
And now more Racers Odds with John Roberts, Jeff Hammond, and Jeff Caliandro.
And welcome back, everybody, to Racers Odds. We will be here with you every race day to let you know where the sharp money is and what kind of drivers are doing what over the course of the weekend so you can make your best decision. This is a joint production of the VSiN Network and the PRN Network, but we're also available on YouTube, SiriusXM, and also NASCAR.com, and more formats to come here in the future. Talking about a couple of things heading into Pocono this weekend. It's the second time in 6 weeks where we've run at this racetrack. It's the closest margin on any of the tracks that have two races. These two are the closest together. Yet, Jeff, they still change quite a bit. Tracks are temperature sensitive, and the temperature's a lot different. Now, also this time around, for the first time ever, we have the PJ1 track bite on the racetrack at a non-SMI racetrack, track that's actually owned by somebody other than the Smith family, and we're going to see what effect that has on the racing very quickly today.
Yeah, I think it may be real interesting to see how it does play out and how quickly it does come into play. You know, we keep talking about the fact that some people are going to go to the rear of the field, most notably Kyle Larson, and believing that being able to pass, especially getting like down into turn one, if that upper groove has got a little bit more grip, look for some drivers to kind of sneak up there, use some of that banking that is available in turn one to get down that Long Pond straightaway and be able to, you know, pick up some positions. So it will be interesting. It will be, as Kevin Harvick has already, I think, eloquently, you know, described it, it will be a different race than we saw the first time. And John, while we're talking about the 6-week spread here this year, just remember, next year when we come back to back, we'll run Saturday and Sunday. A one-day spread. So here again, this PJ1 is something we can put on Saturday, turn right around, come back out on Sunday morning and reapply it, and have basically the similar, you know, track conditions from one day to the next. So it'll be interesting how this learning curve does kind of play out.
Our handicapping expert, Jeff Caliandro, is keeping his finger firmly on the pulse of what is going on in the odds-making world. And you know what, Jeff? With 9 drivers going to the back of the pack for inspection, among other issues, how is that shaping the odds? How are they moving heading into green flag time?
Well, you know, it's really amazing. 17 of the 20 head-to-head matchups this week, the favorite is minus $1.40 or more, meaning you have to lay $1.40 just to win $1. If you go back to the June race, only 7 such matchups out of the 20 had a favorite who was minus 140 or more. The underdogs in June had a very profitable day by beating the favorite 7-6, and of course winning the extra vig by having those underdogs.
Okay, so one of the places that our experts tell us that there's great value, of course, is the head-to-head matchups. So let's dive in now to those head-to-head matchups. Check out our group number 1 of matchups, which have some of the odds-on favorites to win the race, but these are very close matchups when you look at performance so far this weekend on the track. Kyle Busch with Brad Keselowski, Martin Truex Jr., and also Kevin Harvick. Now, Kyle Busch is looking at one other thing, though, in a lot of officials are looking at the same thing in terms of restarts. Before the Truck Series race, NASCAR warned the truck drivers about gamesmanship on restarts. Here's what Kyle Busch had to say about the same thing in the Cup Series.
Yeah, there's been way more gamesmanship going on with restarts this year because it is priority number 1 on trying to make passes. You have about 3 laps to make passes and get yourself in position essentially before everything single files out. Once it starts to single file out, that's kind of it. Depending on especially the racetracks you go to, but like Loudon last week, it was kind of that way. There was a few guys that could pass and get up towards the front. Dover's definitely that way. Here at Pocono is definitely that way. Once you get yourselves single filed and strung out, the aero effects are just too great to overcome. So restarts are everything. And yeah, there's certain gamesmanship being played on restarts. It's been a lot more this year. Everybody kind of understanding that, realizing that, and so I would agree that it was about time NASCAR stepped in, or all of us were just going to continue to see what all we could get away with.
Yeah, so the basic idea is there's a restart zone and the leader is supposed to lead the way, but sometimes that doesn't exactly happen. Sometimes you don't want to be the first driver to take off in a restart situation. It's a word, Jeff, we hear every weekend, and restarts are huge.
They are huge, John, but make sure we understand when people talk about we're playing games. We've also listened to some interviews, some other drivers, most notably Kevin Harvick. And what Kyle and Kevin both are kind of referring to is, folks, you're allowed to have, your transmission to set up to where if you want to restart in second gear, you can make sure that second gear complements third and fourth, so you get rolling like you'd like to. Some others would like to go to first. So you kind of, you change that ratio, and what it does, it means that you're going to be able to have more of a launch if you're going down in first gear. I don't want to get too technical here, but this is what some of these drivers, some of these teams were doing, and some of these other drivers were catching the fact that, hey, this guy's down in first gear. I can hear him when he's changing. So all of this combined goes into that gamesmanship. If you got against a guy, he's going to use second gear, and you've got first, you slow the field way down, and then you launch and get more of a jump on the rest of the field. NASCAR is trying to keep it even, and that's what it's all about. And some of these guys were getting a little bit too good of knowing how to take advantage of somebody else's deficiencies.
So at the bottom of your screen, you see odds to win the race, our countdown clock that we're using from time to time. That's the countdown to green flag. And Jeff Coyandro, when you look at this first group of matchups, you just explained a moment ago why some drivers are at minus whatever they are. And it's obvious when you look at the past few races for Kyle Busch, why he finds himself at, say, for instance, minus 220 to Brad Keselowski.
Yeah, minus 220 is an awfully big number on a head-to-head matchup. Remember, you would be getting only 45 cents for every dollar that you wagered, 45 cents profit. And that's an awful lot to put against Brad Keselowski, who frankly has been very strong at Pocono. And I think Keselowski at plus 180 certainly garners some value. If you go down just a couple more, you see that Kyle Busch is minus 135 to Kevin Harvick. This is the cheapest that Kyle Busch has been as a favorite at Pocono in his last 12 matchups.
How does Kyle do overall, Jeff, in matchups? How has he done so far this year when he's placed head-to-head?
Well, he does very well. He has one of the best winning percentages. But part of the problem is he's such a heavy favorite almost in every matchup that he's in. It's very difficult to make a profit. So if he loses even a quarter of his overall matchups, it could be a situation where he's barely making any money on an ROI.
Interesting story, though, about Brad Keselowski. He always does run well here at Pocono, but it was a few years back where Keselowski was testing at a road course, broke his ankle the week prior to a Pocono race, went out there and won the race with the broken ankle. So with that in mind, whether it's here nor there, but Jeff C., what do you like? Is there a matchup in number one that you would like to take, or would you pass on these?
No, I think if I'm going to look at this group of matchups, I'm going to take Kyle Busch at minus 135 over Kevin Harvick. He was fastest over a 5 consecutive lap average, and he was third over 10 consecutive laps in happy hour. He's won 3 out of the last 4. Toyota's won 4 straight at Pocono. That's where my money's going to go on Kyle Busch.
So, Hammond, if we move along now to matchups number 2, our second set of head-to-head matchups, here are some of the drivers that we've seen so far that have had a little bit of trouble either in the qualifying or either with wrecking their cars. Ryan Blaney, Kyle Larson. Blaney's minus 150 to Kyle's 130 plus.
No, that's an interesting little matchup there because to to me, Ryan Blaney, even though he's got one win here, he's having issues because now with the qualifying situation going to the back, the combination of all the above, I'm nervous about this particular matchup in my own opinion. I got one other one down here that I do kind of like that involves Ryan Blaney, and that's Clint Boyer. I'm kind of liking that one. I think Clint is coming into the situation of knowing I've got to have a good race. I think his back's against the wall, and I'm looking for him to step up. And Pocono's been a pretty decent racetrack for him. More importantly, I think Stuart Haas has found a little bit lately. We saw that last weekend at New Hampshire. I think it's going to carry over here this weekend, and I'll look for good things out of him. And I think Ryan Blaney right now is going to have a little bit of a slow start, and I think this is going to have a big effect on this head-to-head matchup, in my opinion.
And some fans have told us over recent years that they find the playoff situation and the scoring somewhat difficult to get a grasp on. What's very easy to get a grasp on is the fact that Jimmy Johnson and Clint Boyer being separated by 17 points. Well, that's simply 17 positions on the racetrack. So I think, Jeff C., there is a hunger factor to Clint Boyer, and he finds himself, even, basically, with Kurt Busch. And then if we look up at another Clint Boyer, minus 120 to Kyle Larson's even.
Yeah, those are interesting matchups. And I've grown to like Clint Boyer more and more over this weekend, how he's progressed. So I think that he is a justifiable underdog in a few of these matchups. And when you look at him against Kurt Busch, they've run about the same going into the race. And neither one was affected by a failure in inspection. So I think it'll be a very competitive matchup.
Okay, so matchups as a whole here in our group number 2. Jeff C., who do you like? What do you like?
I think if I were going to really dissect this one, I would have to go with an underdog. And I think I would also look at Clint Boyer over Blaney at plus 120.
Hammond, is there one you like in particular that you would want to wager on?
Might be.
Are you going to tell us?
I think right now I'm going to save this one. I'm going to save this one for the end of the show, guys, and kind of surprise you.
Yeah, I just wondered if you're going to share that with us, but that's okay.
I'm going to share. Folks, let me tell you right now, I'm saving this right here for my matchup and my pick as far as at the end of the show right there. Make sure you stay with us because I got a little surprise for you.
Okay, let's check out another group of matchups here, head-to-head matchups involving some other drivers.
Keeping him honest, Jeff.
Exactly, that you may find a little bit interesting. Jeff C., Denny Hamlin had a grasp on this racetrack when he first started out like nobody's business, winning 4 races here. But the thing is that all those wins have only come more than 9 years ago. It was 9 years ago when he won his last race here. He is still strong at this point. They're still hungry to win, although they're locked in the playoffs right now. It's a group that knows how to get it done here, and he finds himself matched up with Joey Logano, Chase Elliott, and those are kind of interesting to look at with Denny being minus 150 and minus 220.
Yeah, big favorite for Denny Hamlin. Right out of the gate, I think Joey Logano has value at plus 130. Starting second, he was 4th over 5 consecutive laps in happy hour, and I think he is kind of flying under the radar today. And then when you go down and look at Hamilton and Elliott, Elliott, a big underdog, but maybe things aren't going to be so bad for him because of the other drivers who also failed inspection.
So another place you can look, as we talked about with Steve Mackinnon earlier, about some of these underdogs perhaps having a good run. When you look at something like Alex Bowman against Jimmy Johnson as a 7-time champion and a guy that's just on the outside of the playoffs looking in, you can understand probably why he's sitting at minus 140. But, in these days, Jeff, he hasn't been really outrunning the younger members of Hendrick Motorsports.
No, he sure hasn't. And if you look at this matchup, it's been very flat since yesterday evening. Johnson was to start much higher up. Now he'll start 32nd, so he was minus $1.40 favorite. Well, now Bowman is going to start 12th, while Johnson starts 32nd, and Bowman is still the underdog. So from a starting gap, position alone, Bowman has a big advantage, and that includes being an underdog as well.
And Hammond, some of the concerns that we've heard about Jimmy Johnson and the 48 team is that although they have had some good finishes this year, it doesn't seem exactly like they have passed other quality teams to get those finishes. It's been difficult for those guys once they're back mired in the field to make it through, and that's very un-Jimmy Johnson-like.
Yeah.
But then again, you can't drive a slow car fast if you don't have the best car.
No, and the thing is right now there's a little bit of a trend here when you look across the board. We see moments of brilliance and speed out of the Hendrick cars from time to time. And it looked like they had found some speed when it came to qualifying at Pocono. But the problem is both of these cars, William Byron as well as Jimmy Johnson, were found, out of tolerance and now have been, sent basically to the rear of the field 31st and 32nd. So a big challenge, but still they're both starting back there. And if it's for real, when you look on the 10-lap averages, William Byron shows he's got some good speed, and so does Jimmy. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch these two and this organization as a whole to see whether or not they can kind of like work their way up through the field and wind up getting themselves in contention. Because Jimmy, let's face it, he has definitely got, an urgency to perform here today.
Yeah, you can't quite imagine the playoffs without Jimmy Johnson in them. There's some time left. And also, you say just go win, but that's a lot more difficult done than said. And Jeff Kuyander, if you look at one matchup here that's somewhat intriguing, it's probably a very wise bet to take Joey Logano finishing ahead of Chase Elliott in terms of where they probably will end up after what happened so far this weekend. But you do at the same time have to take into consideration, though, that Joey Logano is minus 190.
Yeah, and to me, that's just too big of a price when it comes to head-to-head matchups. So many things can happen in a race, whether it's pit strategy or mechanical failure or incident. So much can happen that anything over 150, I really shy away from.
Okay, so with that being said, William Byron against Jimmy Johnson. William Byron has had the highest 10-lap average so far this weekend in practice. A young man who has finished in the top 10 in the last two races at Pocono and seems to be trending in the right direction. Jeff C., would you take Jimmy Johnson and William Byron given the minus 145?
Well, earlier in the week we gave this one away, and William Byron was actually the underdog at plus 110. So we did take him. But at minus 145, they're both starting from the rear. I think it's a little much.
Okay, so that being said, Hammond, anybody in matchups number 3 that you would take? Would you go here, or would you leave it alone?
I don't have a warm and fuzzy about any of these guys here in this particular group. And like what Jeff's saying, there's such a disparity and separation with a lot of these bets. I mean, it makes you very suspect, and it makes you wonder whether or not it's worth the effort to try to pull one out of these guys.
So about 1 hour before the green flag waves, and we're looking at some changing in the landscape of odds heading in to this second Pocono race of the season. When we come back, we'll tell you one other wrinkle that may be thrown in today that could have a big impact on who wins this race. It was a bulletin from NASCAR that clarified some things and got rid of some things when it comes to pitting these cars. So stay with us. We'll be back with much more of the Racer's Odds in just a moment.
As states have begun the legalization of sports gambling, the entire sports landscape is changing.
I think we're going to see more and more states fall in line, and this gets legalized across probably all 50 states.
And so is the way you listen to Sports Talk Radio. I'm Brent Musburger, and on the Vegas Stats and Information Network, we follow the money and the games. It's sports talk you can bet on. So check out VSiN. Odds are you're going to like what you hear on Channel 204 and streaming on your phone or at home on SiriusXM connected devices and speakers.
The IRS is the most feared agency in the world. You've heard ads from other companies offering to help taxpayers only if they owe over $10,000. Here at Platinum Tax Defenders, we're A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau, and we're proud to be one of the only tax firms in the country who understands that people who owe less than $10,000 need help just as badly. The IRS doesn't care how much money you owe. They'll still garnish your wages and even seize your assets. So whether you owe just a few $1,000s or hundreds of thousands, call now for your free tax consultation. If you qualify, we may even be able to reduce your tax debt down to a small fraction of what you owe. So don't wait until the IRS seizes your property and garnishes your wages. Call 800-856-1330 and get your tax problem resolved once and for all. That number again is 800-856-1330. 800-856-1330.
Get ready for every NASCAR weekend with VSiN's Point Spread Weekly. Editor Steve Mackinnon runs a simulation prior to every NASCAR Monster Energy race. He takes into account driver, team, track type, speed at practice, and more. The simulator is run 1,000 times and results are in Point Spread Weekly. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Enjoy NASCAR more. Point Spread Weekly. Subscribe now. Log on to vsin.com/subscribe. VSiN, changing the way you watch sports.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
Are you ready to celebrate the thrill of victory and cash a ticket even on defeats? Make Point Spread Weekly a part of your prep for all the games. Baseball, football, golf, NASCAR. Point Spread Weekly. Sharpen your edge now with the help of Matt Humans, Dave Tooley, and the rest of my guys in the desert. Point Spread Weekly gets you ready with exclusive handicapping stories backed by proprietary data you won't find anywhere else. Go to vsin.com/subscribe. That's vsin.com/subscribe for Point Spread Weekly.
It's more Racers Odds.
And welcome back, everybody, to Racers Odds. I'm John Roberts, Jeff Hammond, Jeff Cuyandro with you here as we get you the information you need to find out where the sharp money is on today's Cup race at Pocono. Now, here is the bulletin and what happened. The word from NASCAR this week said that at the beginning of the year, the rule was a tire must be within an arm's length of a crew member or it will be considered uncontrolled. Now, the rule has been clarified to take the term arm's length away from it, but an uncontrolled tire is a tire that is out of the pit box, a safety issue, or impeding the progress of another team's pit stop. So with that all being said, Jeff Hammond, we have seen so far this year several outcomes of races that have been determined. You could have all your money on one driver. He could have had a great race car. He gets that tire penalty, and all of a sudden that's all off the table.
Yeah, and I think the sad part about it was there were several instances that could have been – it could have gone either way, folks, and I think that's what NASCAR is looking at, that this decision, once it's made, sometimes cannot be undone. And they realized that I think that they needed to do something, and they had some obvious situations that were pointed out to them, and they felt like that this needed to be changed. I know it's no time to debate it. I'm glad they're going to do it. I don't agree with the timing on it, but at the same time, today, that's the one thing about your favorite team. If you decide you want to spend some good money or your money and place a bet, this will not be a call that could come back to haunt you, I think, somewhere during the course of the race. And then also, in my opinion, this rule now reads more like it used to back in my day, and it's the way it had been forever. As long as that tire stays, in control inside your pit box, it does not impede somebody, getting around their car in the performance of their duty, then it's okay. And I think the teams have done a great job all year long. We've not seen a lot of tires get out of control and get outside the pit box the entire season. So that is the main safety reason. And as far as I'm concerned, I think right now we're headed in the right direction, and I at least applaud the fact that we're going to make this change. I think the timing is a little bit off, but other than that, it's a good deal.
And here's another important thing about the change. Now you are able to roll a tire from the outside of the pit box to the pit wall. Before, having the tire have to be within an arm's length of a crew member, you couldn't make that roll. Now, they can determine a tire if it's rolled in the wrong way or if it's bounced. They could determine it uncontrolled. So there's still that human element that is there, but nonetheless could completely change the choreographing.
Let me tell you something right now. That is exactly what will get you this rule changed back the other way. If the teams get out of control once again and start interpreting this rule, as long as they do what they've been doing and they got their choreography downright leave it alone, guys. Don't start changing things here and trying to take advantage of what NASCAR is giving back to you. That's what'll get you in trouble, John.
Yeah, because those pit stops are timed. They're choreographed like a fine ballet.
Exactly.
The way you do it, because it's so important. It's one of the best places to pass these days. So, Jeff Coyandro, when you look at that now that has been taken away somewhat, that call, does that affect down the road here what pit crews can do what with what drivers and maybe affect odds?
Well, I think the best crews always seem to rise to the top, and Kyle Busch certainly has one. Olive Gibbs, and so many others. I think what it does is it gives you a little bit of a chance to breathe as a wagerer when cars come down pit row, because when they were within an arm's length, having to keep that tire so close, we saw a lot of penalties, and as you mentioned, nothing can take the wind out of your sails more quickly than a pit road violation.
All right, guys, so let's dive in now to our groups. Let's start out with Group A that has in particular what you would call, I think, the big dogs. Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski, Kevin Harvick, and Martin Truex Jr. Now, when you look at Kevin Harvick at plus 205 in this group, remember, Kevin Harvick won last week, and Pocono is one of the very few racetracks left where Kevin Harvick has not won. So Kevin believes that strategy could really come into play this afternoon.
Our guys have done a good job. We scrambled today in practice and never even made a qualifying run in practice. So, we worked on our race stuff as long as we could and never really felt like we got it 100% right. We weren't bad, but, I think as you look at that, our car was pretty good after about lap 6. And, I think as you get into the race tomorrow, there's going to be a lot of two-tire strategy, a lot of green flag strategy. There's going to be a lot of unique times that you pit. So keeping yourself inside that time limit of that pit window is important to try to, fulfill that strategy and keep yourself up front. So we'll see. I think as you, look at the things that track position has meant this year, I think obviously having that tomorrow would be very important.
And once again, less than an hour to go before the green flag waves the big triangle up in Pocono, and that is Kevin Harvick talking about strategy. What a master of strategy his crew chief Rodney Childers has been, and maybe Jeff Coyandro, that is one reason we see out of there. Well, Kyle Busch at plus 175 and Kevin Harvick at plus 205. They are the favorites, and there's good reason behind that.
Yeah, there sure is, John. But what's interesting about this group is that nobody in this group is going to have to go to the back. But the driver that benefits the most is Brad Keselowski, because there were a couple or a few drivers ahead of him that will go to the back. So now he'll start 11th. And at plus 415, that's an awfully big number for somebody who's had 6 top 5s in the last 7 races at Pocono.
So maybe a good driver, Mr. Hammond. Brad Keselowski at plus 415. Who do you like in that group?
Well, I'm a little bit like, if I'm liking somebody in that group as far as a long type shot, I like the Brad Keselowski situation, because when I look at the group, and you can agree to disagree, you got 3 former winners there. And you got one that's not, and that's Kevin Harvick at Pocono. And to me, if you want to kind of go out on a limb, maybe that would be something to take a look at, but I don't know. Jeff, you'd have to kind of give me more schooling on this when I'm looking at numbers and an opportunity to maybe score big, because you never know what's going to happen at Pocono. You never know what's going to happen with this PJ1. So there's the cool thing about that 2 car and their crew chief, Paul Wolf, when we talk about strategy, they are masters on fuel mileage and getting out of sync with everybody else and doing what you might consider the unexpected.
Yeah, they sure are. Jeff, when I look at that, I really think it's Kyle Busch's group to lose. But at plus $1.75, that's awfully short odds to beat 3 other very good drivers. I do think Harvick is odded a little too close to Busch at plus 205. I think that's just a little too shallow on him. So I like Busch, and then Keselowski is a long shot.
Okay, let's move on to Group B at this time. We got Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, Chase Elliott, and Ryan Blaney. A lot of money there, Jeff, on Chase Elliott, but good reason because of what's happened so far this weekend.
Yeah, plus 500, huge underdog, probably the biggest of any of the groups. But again, I don't think his situation quite merits a plus 500. And I think Denny Hamlin is overpriced at plus 140. Joey Logano, I think, is in the best overall situation of this group at plus 240 going into the race.
So, Jeff, just to clarify, if I were to throw $100 down today and I pick Chase Elliott in this group and he finishes ahead of those other three drivers, what happens to my 100?
Well, you would get your 100 back, but you would also get $500 in profit, and you would leave the window with $600 total dollars.
And I believe I would be very happy. That's another thing, too. So Hammond, would you go out on a limb, plus 500 for Chase Elliott, knowing what kind of backup plan they most likely have?
I understand the backup plan, and I understand the fact that he's been in the top 10 a lot when it comes to Pocono, but I just really wonder if that's going to be a smart move for today's race. I think anytime you lose your primary car the way he did, this is not an inspection violation. This right here was just a miscue getting up off the corner, and I think that when you're that much on the edge, now you're behind a little bit as far as practice is concerned. I would be a little bit reluctant. That's just my gut feeling and seeing, even though it's enticing to say, make that one bet and you could really get happy in a hurry. But I just, I really question whether or not they're going to be able to rally back like they need to.
Yes, and you would only be happy in that situation if you were to beat Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, and Ryan Blaney. Again, a lot easier said than done. Got to take a quick break here. We'll continue to look at the groups, who are the favorite in the groups, and also we will have our hot picks of the day. We'll tell you who we're looking at as a very good value in betting here coming up on Racer's Odds. Stay with us.
You didn't think he'd put down the microphone completely, did you?
Greetings from Las Vegas.
Well, neither did we. Hear legendary broadcaster Brent Musburger on the Vegas Stats and Information Network.
I never told my wife how much fun I had when I was staying here for about 3 weeks. Oh, it's terrible living in a casino. It was the greatest 3 weeks of my life. This is the only book in town that's open 24 hours. There you go. Make that bet around 4 o'clock in the morning. You don't need a dress code. Pajamas are good.
Brent Musburger on the Vegas Stats and Information Network. Sirius XM Channel 204.
Jake was in big trouble with the IRS. He owed how much?
$92,000.
Ouch. The IRS left no room for Jake to breathe.
They put a lien on my house, took all the money out of my bank account, took money out of my paychecks. So it was a nightmare.
He needed help fast.
I figured that all these companies were the same until I called Federal Tax Management. You could just tell they knew what they were talking about. Right then and there, I felt like I had some hope.
Stop the liens, levies, and garnishments fast and qualify for one of several special IRS programs that could reduce or even eliminate your tax debt. So, how'd it go for Jake?
They did what they said they would do. They came through for me. I ended up saving an unbelievable amount. I was so jazzed. I was extremely happy.
If you owe more than $10,000 in back taxes, take Jake's advice.
Give Federal Tax Management a phone call. If they help me, they can help anybody.
Call the Federal Tax Management Hotline now. 800-425-6381. 800-425-6381. 800-425-6381.
Get ready for every NASCAR weekend with VSiN's Point Spread Weekly. Editor Steve Makinen runs a simulation prior to every NASCAR Monster Energy race. He takes into account driver, team, track type, speed at practice, and more. The simulator is run 1,000 times and results are in Point Spread Weekly. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Enjoy NASCAR more. Point Spread Weekly. Subscribe now. Log on to vsin.com/subscribe. VSiN, changing the way you watch sports.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
Are you ready to celebrate the thrill of victory and cash a ticket even on defeats? Make Point Spread Weekly a part of your prep for all the games. Baseball, football, golf, NASCAR. Point Spread Weekly. Sharpen your edge now with the help of Matt Humans, Dave Tooley, and the rest of my guys in the desert. Point Spread Weekly gets you ready with exclusive handicapping stories backed by proprietary data you won't find anywhere else. Go to vsin.com/subscribe. That's vsin.com/subscribe for Point Spread Weekly.
We're back with more Racer's Odds.
And welcome back, everybody, to Racers Odds. You know, our odds-making experts earlier in the show, excuse me, gave this race and this racetrack a C- in terms of bet ability or handicapping ability, meaning that we don't often see the kind of predictability we see at some racetracks. So given that with a C-, it means that there's a really good value in underdogs this time around. So as we move on to our Group C, we look at some of the underdogs that may make a big splash this weekend. That Group C has Kyle Larson. He's had his share of troubles this weekend. Eric Jones goes off as a potential race winner at 10-1. Kurt Busch, he's already won his way into the playoffs, but at plus 320, not a bad bet that the former winner at this racetrack, Kurt Busch, could do it again. And Clint Boyer, we have the hunger factor there. So, Jeff Cuyandro, when you look at Group C, intriguing drivers, as many drivers that are up there, that's as many scenarios as you're looking at.
Yeah, you know, when I look at Group C, John, I think Eric Jones has had the best weekend progression of anybody in the group. But at plus $1.35, that's just too shallow of a price to take for him to win a group. I think if I were looking at any of these drivers, as you mentioned, it would probably be one of the longer shots. And I think Kurt Busch or Clint Boyer are justifiable at their odds.
I think if I had to say something on this one, I definitely would say Kurt Busch, with the way he runs at this racetrack and what the team has been able to do lately. He always picks you up some spots, Hammond.
Well, he always does, but also want to point out that when it comes to a place like Pocono, even though he's won here before, he's finished 11th or worse the last three times out of the last 4 races.
And very interesting about Kurt Busch, his 3 victories here at Pocono, they have been with 3 different manufacturers, 3 different teams, and 3 different crew chiefs. So that tells you a lot about Kurt Busch. So, Jeff Cuyandro, when we look at some more long shots, perhaps, here's which is kind of your Hendrick Motorsports group. Group D, you have Jimmy Johnson, Alex Bowman, William Byron, and Ryan Newman. And I think those numbers are very indicative. Again, William Byron, when you look at perhaps what he could do today, yeah, he's going way back there. He's going to have a ways to go after inspection issues, but nonetheless, he was the driver that tops that list that we really like to look at, the fastest in the 10-lap average.
Yeah, he really is, John. The interesting thing about William Byron is that he has the best qualifying to finishing progression in the last 3 races at Pocono other than Kyle Busch. In other words, he's made up the most spots on average the last 3 races at Pocono. But at plus $1.40, again, now he's going to start 31st. Awfully short price to beat those other 3.
Hammond, what do you think? Can he, certainly he wouldn't be much of a value, but then you look at Alex Bowman as being, or Ryan Newman. Now, Ryan Newman methodically has kept himself in playoff contention. And again, we say methodically because he hasn't been actually lighting the world on fire, but he's still around when all is said and done.
I don't know. What I saw last week at New Hampshire was very impressive out of the 6 car. He raced his way up through there. He had a lot of problems, including a plug wire issue, and that team performed admirably. And in the long run, he got up on the wheel and made it happen at a racetrack where he had won before. He's also won here before. This could be an interesting dynamic here. The little bit guy, maybe it's been kind of like he's being overlooked. I think that you have to kind of take him serious because he knows he's in contention right now to make the playoffs, and he's got to run hard and race hard today. It's going to be no different.
Let's take a look at Group E, and the interesting thing about Group E is the fact that all 4 of these drivers have won in the past, but they have not won really recently or yet this year. Chris Buescher, of course, had the upset win in the rain-delayed race here at Pocono. That won his way into a playoff position. Paul Menard has that win at Indy years ago. He's at plus 305. Ricky Stenhouse, of course, the big tracks tend to be really good to him. And Austin Dillon, not too long ago, the Coke 600 and the Daytona 500 winner at plus 160. Jeff Cuyandro, what do you think about this group? Do you touch it or do you stay away?
Well, I think they're too inconsistent across the board, but I also think that Austin Dillon is very overpriced at plus 160 to win this group. I give him about the same shot as Paul Menard, who's plus 305. So if I were going to take a shot on it, I would definitely take the plus 305.
Hammond, would you go into anybody on this group with the numbers that are associated with the driver? Nope. That is a big no. Big no from Hammond. Okay, let's go into Group F right now. And again, some unknown drivers, but certainly some guys who have had some results so far this year. Ty Dillon is coming off 2 of his better runs in his career with top 10 finishes. Bubba Wallace, of course, he's had his troubles so far, but he can make up spots. Michael McDowell is somewhat of the veteran of the group. And then you got Ryan Preece, who impresses from time to time. Hammond, are any of those drivers there? Do you think they're worth the numbers that are next to them?
It's it's pretty evenly matched across the deal. If you take a look at that aspect of it, you talk about, the Ty Dillon situation as far as his numbers are concerned. It's a little bit high, I think, in comparison to who he's racing against. But then again, there's not a lot of excitement in that group at all. If anybody out of this whole group is going to probably have a wow factor to them, I would be more inclined to believe that maybe Ryan Preece may be the guy that can make some noise here, and he's at plus 215. But again, a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of unknowns when it comes to this group as a whole. I mean, and some of that consistency is the knowledge that Michael McDowell, even though he's a great road racer, has never really performed that well here. A little bit limited, knowledge on Ty Dillon and the number of races he's run here. We know that Bubba Wallace changed an engine today. So here you have it. I mean, to me, I consider that a lot of unknowns, and it'd be just strictly out of your gut more than anything else.
Plus 215, is that enough for you, Jeff?
No, it isn't. What shocks me on this group is that Bubba Wallace, who's going to start from the back, he had no happy hour practice whatsoever because they were doing an engine change. How is he plus 255? I would say he would be more adequately priced at plus $4. So I would stay away from this group, but I think that's one driver that I would eliminate right out of the gate.
So, guys, let's go back out of all the groups. Recapping here, are there any groups that you would go for, Jeff C., or would you just stay away from the groups altogether?
I think if I were going to take a shot on one of the groups, I'd probably go with Kyle Busch at $1.75 to win Group A. I just think, he's won 3 out of the last 4 at Pocono. Toyota's been so strong. I think it's his race to lose.
Absolutely, and also the odds makers agree across the board on Kyle Busch, and also there were 25 shots he had, and they didn't work out quite right, and then he seemed to have gotten a grip on this racetrack. And Hammond, how many times have you seen that over the years with a race car driver that struggled at a certain track, figured something out, and no matter what they throw at us with PJ1 compound, changing of race cars, they just seem to have a knack at a certain track?
Well, I've seen this come out of this driver on numerous occasions as far as Kyle Busch is concerned. No matter what the tracks are, at one time it was that way, Chicagoland. He is the kind of driver that he is going to raise his game and elevate his game, and he's going to overcome. He's the only driver right now currently, especially if you don't count the Roval, that's won at every racetrack on the circuit.
Yep.
I'm talking about Charlotte's Roval when they make the switch over to the road course in the fall.
Give him some time.
That's okay. Could happen this year, and then he'll be right back where he was. But he's that kind of a race car driver. And when we look at the overall situation up against what he's up against, and the numbers right now, the numbers don't lie.
Okay, so as we work towards another break here, guys, what we're going to do when we come back, we're going to take a look at the odds to win for the individual drivers. We've been scrolling them across the bottom of the screen. Sometimes that's not the best place to make a wager, but it's very popular with NASCAR fans because, of course, they are very loyal to their particular drivers. We'll tell you who has what odds to win, who falls into the group of favorites, underdogs, and long shots. There could be some value there today because of the unpredictability of this big triangle at Pocono. Stay with us, everybody. We'll be back with more on the Racers' Odds in just a moment.
The Edge, only on the Vegas Stats and Information Network.
How you feeling? I'm feeling good. How you doing, bro? I'm feeling good, man. How you doing? How you doing?
The Edge, weekdays 3 p.m. Eastern.
The Raiders have made some sensational headlines, but I don't think you or I or anybody who seriously handicaps the NFL saying, yeah, the Raiders are going to be a playoff. I'm talking about public, more about public team, especially in Vegas with the excitement with that team going to be here in 2020.
Only on the Vegas Stats and Information Network. Sirius XM Channel 204.
It's crazy.
If you suffer from heartburn or other digestive-related disorders, then there is a new, safe, better, and natural alternative to better digestive wellness and heartburn relief. Praxid not only provides relief of heartburn, but Praxid takes a 360-degree approach to support better digestion, protect you from harmful bacteria, and also balance your stomach to improve digestive functions.
We like to think of it as the multivitamin of digestive health.
It's the only product to combine all natural ingredients known for the digestive health properties into a single patented product. Praxid also comes in easy-to-carry packs. Praxid relieves, restores, and maintains a healthy digestive system. Praxid is available here for only $39.95. Shipping and handling is free, and your money back is guaranteed.
To take advantage of this special radio offer, call now 1-800-829-5735. That's 1-800-829-5735. Again, 1-800-829-5735.
Get ready for every NASCAR weekend with VSiN's Point Spread Weekly. Editor Steve Makinen runs a simulation prior to every NASCAR Monster Energy race. He takes into account driver, team, track type, speed at practice, and more. The simulator is run 1,000 times and results are in Point Spread Weekly. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Enjoy NASCAR more. Point Spread Weekly. Subscribe now. Log on to vsin.com/subscribe. VSiN, changing the way you watch sports.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
Are you ready to celebrate the thrill of victory and cash a ticket even on defeats? Make Point Spread Weekly a part of your prep for all the games. Baseball, football, golf, NASCAR. Point Spread Weekly. Sharpen your edge now with the help of Matt Humans, Dave Tooley, and the rest of my guys in the desert. Point Spread Weekly gets you ready with exclusive handicapping stories backed by proprietary data you won't find anywhere else. Go to vsin.com/subscribe. That's vsin.com/subscribe for Point Spread Weekly.
And now more Racers Odds with John Roberts, Jeff Hammond, and Jeff Caliandro.
And welcome back, everybody, to Racers Odds. There is always a little bit of movement coming up to green flag time because that's the cutoff as to when you can place your wager on a particular driver, matchup, or group. But today, because of what's gone on in inspection and with cars going to the back of the field, we have what you would call a lot of movement, Jeff. What's been shaking?
Yeah, there sure is. So now Kyle Busch is just 2-1 to win the race. And if we look a little bit deeper at some value, Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski have both gone up and are now 16-1 each. William Byron, who was opened at 80-1, was 20-1 earlier this morning, now rests at 30-1. So there's been some big changes just amongst that group due to all the infractions in inspection.
So when it comes to movement, though, and what has happened so far, I still like William Byron at 30-1, Jeff, because of what they have done so far. Yes, there was a tech thing that sent him back, but when you talk about his ability to pass cars at the track, 2 top 10 finishes in a row for William, and also the 10-lap average, that might be a place where this is one of those upset drivers you may be talking about.
He's been so fast and looked so good in practice going into the race. You know, I think it's going to come down to some pit strategy. He has that wicked Chad Knaus up on the box, and if they can make some really strategic moves, it would not surprise me to see him amongst the leaders late in the race.
Hammond, if you want a guy on top of the pit box, if a race is going to come down to strategy, I think you'd pick Chad Knaus, wouldn't you? I'll give you 7 reasons why.
I'll give you 8.
The 7 championships and?
The fact common sense is going to tell me that you pick a 7-time champion crew chief. That's why.
Exactly. But one thing that hasn't shaken a lot, though, Jeff, is Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex. They were your favorites to begin with, and they still are because not too much has happened to them so far this weekend.
No, they've just looked really good. And I think their starting position, the fact that it stayed locked, I think that goes a long way as to speaking toward the better steam on these individual drivers to win the race.
So Ham, we said we have a C- grade when it comes to picking and handicapping a winner here at Pocono. What about for that crew chief? What's the grade of Pocono when it comes to strategy? How much can that crew chief have to do, and how hard is his job today?
Well, his job's the same every time you go to the racetrack. But when you get to a place like Pocono, I think the playbook is a little bit more open because of the length of the racetrack. You can come down, make a pit stop, and not go down a lap in the process of the race. Fuel mileage is always going to be important. And it's the way the stages are set up too, John. We go 50 in the first, 50 in the second, and then you run 60 in the final third segment stage. So it's really it's almost like running a race in its own entirety. You're going to have some opportunity. I guess you might say the best way to put it is you're going to go about 30, 32 laps before you make a pit stop. And that's going to be one of the things that's going to be real important is where you balance this situation out and how do you want to wind up being at the end of a stage. So it'll be interesting to see how everybody plays it out. Kevin Harvick, I think, touched on it during one of his interviews earlier today. Even Pat Patterson talked about the strategy and track position. Remember this, folks. Track position all day long is going to wind up being the king. So if you've got a Paul Wolfe, if you've got a Chad Knaus, got Rodney Childers, you've got the kind of guys you need on top of your boxes, surveying and paying attention to what's going on and knowing when to stay and when to go.
Now, we had to do a little bit of double take when we went back in the rule book this week, and the record book, and looked at who had done what at this racetrack, where it said the guy who had led the most laps on the way to a victory was, of course, Kurt Busch. He led 179 laps in his last victory at the racetrack. But you wonder, how could that be? Because there's only 160 laps in this race. Well, the thing is, it used to be 500 miles as opposed to 400 miles. So that is how Kurt Busch could have led that 179. But you don't really, Hammond, see that kind of rear-end kicking performance. We haven't really seen it so far this year. We've seen a lot of clean and green racing. That could, of course, change at any time when you go into a track that's unknown. But those have been the trends.
No, this has been the trends, but this is the reason why NASCAR has been working so hard coming into this season to make those kind of statistics a statistic for historical value only, because they want to see more people leading laps, a lot more lead changes, keeping things interesting. Restarts are pivotal, so that's the reason why we have stages now. All of these things are directed at more competitive racing and more quality passes during the course of the thing, basically a better entertaining race, and I think NASCAR has done that so far this year.
A little less than a half hour before green flag time, and it is time for us to defer to our experts because when you want the situation to get right, Jeff, you look towards the experts. So these are our sure money picks, the ones we really like, the ones we're looking at. And let's start out with the expert, Jeff Coyandro. What do you like as your pick for this week?
Plus 115. As we mentioned, this is Kyle Busch's smallest price in his last 9 matchups at Pocono. And with so many big favorites, I think I'm just going to stay kind of close to the vest with this one.
Okay, good deal. There it is. That's Jeff C's bet of the week. How about Hammond's bet of the week?
I'm getting ready to say, when I saw Jeff pop up on there, I said, that's not my bets. Oh, wrong Jeff.
Different Jeff.
Sorry about that. Believe it or not, you were trying to force me into making a decision earlier, and I really like the Ryan Blaney versus Clint Bowyer, and I'm going to go with Bowyer. I think it's his time. I think his positioning right now is right. I think his hunger is where it needs to be, and unfortunately, Ryan Blaney is going to the back of the field, so he's going to have to work his way just to get close to Mr. Bowyer to begin with. So I like this matchup right here, and I like the odds as far as Bowyer being at plus 120.
So, guys, the reason I'm going with this matchup that's coming up right now, I do listen to our experts. I do listen to Jeff and Steve, and they tell us, okay, there's got to be value to the bet, and sometimes a minus 145 is not the best way to go. But this is to prove a point right now in terms of where one young driver that I think could really have a good day today is. Although it would not make me much money, although it is not the best monetary bet, I think in terms of actually having it come to fruition in what William Byron's done at this racetrack lately, and where Jimmy Johnson and the 48 have been trending pretty much everywhere right now. Granted, there is a hunger factor to Jimmy Johnson and the 48 team, but I just feel like William Byron is an up-and-coming driver that is figuring these things out every time he goes back somewhere. So if I had to lay a couple of bucks down, I think this would be the one that would be a sure bet, although it would not be a greatly profitable bet. I just wanted to say that because I am listening to Jeff Cuyandro. I
was getting ready to say that was an awful lot of talk right there, Jeff, by one man that could have just got to the point and say, I'm doing this just because I like the kid.
Well, yeah, but the point being, though, is there's two different ways to go about wagering, right, Jeff? Sometimes you do it with your heart. Sometimes you do it with your wallet. It's much better to do it with the wallet than with the heart.
I think your heart is fighting with your wallet right about now.
But that's right. There's different ways to approach this.
There certainly is, but let everything go. Use your head and just do what you think is right. And really, John, I love your pick. We gave Byron away when he was a plus 110 underdog going into the weekend in this matchup. He's looked outstanding. They both got sent to the back. Now, they weren't starting far apart to begin with. I think Byron was starting 8th and Johnson was starting 6th, so they're going to be together anyways. I think Byron's going to outrun him. So, great pick.
And the thing is, I will back that up as far as the numbers are concerned. As of late, William Byron's been able to pop off him top 10s, and that's probably all he's going to need to be able to outrun his teammate is just to be able to get that top 10. Jimmy's not really been known as of late to be able to crack the top 5 a lot, and who knows what's going to happen by the end of the day. But, Jeff, I just wanted to tell you real quick, I love your graph that you were able to send over to our guys and we're able to put up on the screen this week so you could better understand what it actually means when you see even money bets all the way, pluses and minuses. I think it helped me a lot. Thank you very much. I went ahead and made myself a color chart so that as a newbie, I can sit here and look at what's going on, folks, and even I can understand what he's trying to explain as we go through this process because I'm one of those guys. Sometimes people tell me something, it don't stick between my ears, but they show me a picture. It kind of like the light comes on.
Yes, and occasionally the lights do come on here, and if the light comes on in the right way, it can mean a lot of money in your pocket. One more quick thing, though, Jeff Cuyandro, about William Byron. We have seen William Byron, in terms of just odds to win the race, go as low as 16-1, and now because of what has happened, he's up to was the last time we saw it, was it 30-1? Was it up to 30-1?
Yeah, it has. It's floated up to 30-1, as have a lot of the drivers. When you see Kyle Busch go from plus 250 now down to plus $2, they've had to raise odds on the others to compensate for his coming down and becoming even a bigger favorite than he was.
And also, Jeff, we need even betting on opposite sides of this thing, so sometimes it depends on what kind of money is coming in, right? Does that not also have an effect on the odds?
Yeah, it definitely does. When a lot of money is coming in on one driver, they try to make the odds on the other drivers more attractive to the bettors to even out that take.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much. And Jeff Hammond, when we look at this race, at what it's done over the years, going from 500 miles to 400 miles, I think it may be a sign of the future. Now, granted, there's a lot of things to take into consideration, and it could really have an effect on who wins and who's the odds-on favorite to win. But we have seen a very positive effect on this particular race, cutting 100 miles out of it, going from 500 to 400 miles, and it may be something we're looking at in the future.
No, I think people can readily agree that sometimes less is more, and it's all about really increasing the energy and the urgency of the competitors, because when they go into, if you got to run a 20-lap race, they get up on the wheel a whole lot quicker and they give a lot less on that shorter run they're going to make. When you've got a long ways to go, you learn how to pace yourself. And sometimes people wonder, well, why does everything start happening toward the end? Well, that's when it means the most, folks, whether you're going toward the end of a stage or whether you're going toward the end of the race. Everything is about the need and how bad do you want it. And I think we're going to see even more of this with just a few races that we've got left. I believe we've got 5 more after Pocono before the cutoff, and we start the playoff series. So these guys all realize, and whether you're on the edge of falling out as far as like Boyer is, or you're fighting to get in, it's just all about how bad do you want it. and can you get up on the wheel and get it done in a short period of time? And John, let's also remember, this is the first time that we're going to see a repeat. And it's, even though it's not apples to apples this time, we're going back to a racetrack the second time. This is Pocono, just 6 weeks ago. So see how much the racing does change and how much the intensity of these drivers is up compared to what it was 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, because 6 weeks ago, there were 11 races to go before the cutoff. And you take a look at the playoff standings, those guys in green, they have clinched a playoff berth. And look at the guys who are in the hunt. 17 points for Jimmy Johnson, Daniel Suarez, 60 for Paul Menard. That is going to be really tough to do. And also, let's keep in mind that in order for a driver to move up and get in to the playoff chase, somebody has to drop out, and that means misfortune, unfortunately, for somebody along the way. Want to thank you for coming along for the ride on this edition of Racers Odds. Again, you can catch us on PRN, VSiN, SiriusXM, NASCAR.com. Thanks for joining us. We hope you found it informative, and we'll see you on the next race day.
This has been Racers Odds, a presentation of TRN, the Performance Racing Network.